Penn State fans, how are you? We have a special surprise for you here on Monday, August 11th. The blue-white breakdowns continue. Bob Flounders. It's not Max Ralph with me this time. It is Johnny McGonigal. Johnny McGons. He typically goes with Max on Thursday. He's pinch hitting today. Lot to get to with him. Lot to get to with Penn State football as they creep closer to their season opener against Nevada, which is still a couple weeks away. But we've got a chance to hear from James and his players, a couple of practice availabilities. Johnny has been hard at work in his kind of new dual role, not only covering Penn State, but also Philadelphia Eagles, which is, I think, a team that he knows about as much about as anyone. Go Birds, Johnny. I say that even as I'm wearing a Dallas Cowboys visor. I'm not very optimistic about Dallas, but you know what? I still got to represent my team. Johnny, it's great seeing you. We have a lot to get to here, but I just wanted to kick it to you. What's on your mind? How you been doing? How's life in Philly?
It's great. It's great, Bob. No, it's great to join you on this Monday pod. Max and I will be back Thursday for the live pod, as always. But I needed more Bob Flounders in my life. So I love that we're able to chat.
Fair. I mean, that's fair. It's fair.
Yeah. I mean, everyone needs more Bob Flounders in their life. Everything's been going well. I was at training camp last week, preseason game opener against the Bengals for the Eagles. A little bit more of that this week, and I know Penn State has open practice, or not open practice, but media availability Tuesday night. I know Max will be there. I know you'll be there. We'll see. I'm still trying to nail down a one-on-one interview, an exclusive that has been approved for a while, but we've got to get it done still before the season starts.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe Tuesday is the night I talk to one of Penn State's best players one-on-one. So we'll see. But yeah, everything's been going well.
That's great. One of the things, I know that you and Max covered a lot of ground with your initial AP Top 25 ballot. You've been doing it for a while. I know it's something that you look forward to writing, and you put a lot of time into it. It typically runs, I believe, on Sundays or Mondays, and I think that is still the case. But and I also wanted to talk, as we record this here on Monday, it's a little bit earlier, 10 a.m., you have a profile on one of Penn State's very best players, and I think I've learned how to pronounce his last name correctly, Vega Ioane. I've been unfortunately I even apologized to him. I talked to him over the summer, said, "Hey man, really my bad. What I was calling," he's like, "It's okay." But I think that's the pronunciation.
Yeah,
great player, fascinating story, how he got here. I think it was him and Zane were both 3-star players maybe in that 2022 class. And man, have they developed. But I wanted to talk about that, your ballot. Also, it's never too early, Johnny, to talk to you about the college football playoff this year and kind of how you kind of see things, what interests you. But why don't, before we get to Venga, and I know you talk with Max a lot, in case the listeners and the viewers haven't checked it out, Johnny has his detailed top 25 ballot. It ran a couple of days ago. Just some highlights. I think Johnny was six Big Ten teams I think made it. I'm always curious about how you rank your top 5. You had said, I think, coming out of spring that Penn State was your number 1, and that remains the case. But if you check it out, but yet his top 5: Penn State, Clemson, Texas, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. I just wanted to say that before you wrote that, or before I saw what you had written, I was starting to marinate quite a bit on Clemson, just because I don't want to say they've kind of, since they were pretty dominant there a few years ago with some great talent, some great games with Alabama, they kind of got lost in the shuffle of the SEC and all that stuff. But this team that they have coming back, they have players at all the right spots, and you have them ranked second. And I was thinking, and I think you closed your piece with, don't be surprised if they're the ones that are crowned national champions. And I do think when you think about Penn State and Clemson and what Penn State's good at and what Clemson's good at, if they would play, Clemson matches up real well with Penn State if they're healthy. And I think that is a game I would love to see.
Yeah, Penn State and Clemson are my number 1 and number 2 teams in my preseason top 25 AP ballot for similar reasons. A lot of returning talent. 2 coaches who have been in their programs for a very long time with staffs that are well established. But really, you look at the talent. They both have, returning starting quarterbacks who have a lot of experience and a lot of NFL upside as well. And Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik. Clemson returns more in the receiver department. They have three out of their 4 top receivers returning from last year, including Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco, who I think are 2 of the better receivers in the country that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah.
And then their defense, just littered with returning talent on the defensive line, linebacker, and secondary, most notably Peter Woods, who, him and Zane Durant are probably the 2 best defensive tackles in the country, 2 guys who have been getting some preseason All-American love. TJ Parker off the edge is very, very good. Him and Dennis Sutton have been getting, a lot of preseason accolades and notice. So I think both of these teams are kind of built on the back of veterans, built on the back of really talented guys who could be, could have been in the NFL last year or in this most recent NFL draft. I think judging from some of our, readers or even just people, who just, see a preseason poll and chime in and decide to send me an email or a note, I think Clemson being that high has been the most controversial maybe thing that I've done.
Yeah.
I don't think Penn State being number 1 is controversial at all, for all the reasons we talked about throughout the offseason. I had Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame rounding out that top 5. And really, I was going back and forth on a lot of these teams, right? I had Ohio State originally in there at 2 and moved them out for various reasons, but I really like Clemson this year. And if they disappoint, they disappoint. It's a preseason poll, right? There hasn't been any football played yet. But yeah, Bob, like you mentioned, 6 Big Ten teams. I had Penn State 1, Ohio State 4, Oregon 9, Illinois 11, Michigan 13, and Indiana 17. Iowa is a team that I think could be sneaky, get into the top 25 if Gronowski, their FCS quarterback transfer, is really good, which I think he could be, dual threat guy. But those are the 6 teams that I think are the best teams in the Big Ten going into this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously not all of them are going to make the CFP, but I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana does it again. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan bounces back and makes the CFP this year. So a lot of talent throughout the conference.
Just no love for my Nebraska Cornhuskers. Not a big deal, Johnny. Not a big
Dylan
deal.
Raiola wants
to earn it. They have to earn it.
They have to earn it. If Dylan Raiola wants to play like a 5-star quarterback, I mean, I know last year he's a young guy. He's a young guy, right? So he's got time to grow and develop, and he could get there. But he should probably focus less on the Patrick Mahomes, just trying to mimic him in pregame and go play some good quarterback play. I like Dylan Raiola. I think he will be a good player. But a lot was expected of him last year.
He's got an upgraded OC. That guy, he's been a head coach before, and I think that is a good thing for Raiola. I think it's a good thing for that offense. But I just wanted to say before we close, looking at your rankings, and you said you got some interesting comments and emails. I was thinking about your ongoing love affair with SEC fans and maybe how it was perceived by them.
I haven't got any. I don't know who. I don't know who. Someone called me delusional for having Clemson number 2, which I don't know. Maybe they're a Georgia fan and they were upset that I put Georgia I think 8th or 7th, I believe it was. I have Alabama pretty high. I got Bama 6. I mean, shoot, Texas is in the SEC. I feel like some old school SEC fans don't want to accept Texas as an SEC school yet, but
I think a lot of people forget that they're an SEC team. Quite frankly,
I know. I have Oklahoma actually pretty decently high. I think I had them 18 or 16 or so. That's a make or break year for Brent Venables. You mentioned Max and I talked a lot about our top 25. Oklahoma was a team that we didn't talk about. They brought in John Mateer, dual threat quarterback from Washington State, one of the better players in college football last year. If you liked the Pac-12 after dark, the only two teams in the Pac-12, but they were still playing at night. John Mateer is a really good player. They brought in Washington State's offensive coordinator as well. Brent Venables in a make or break hot seat kind of year. I think Red River is going to be a lot of fun between those two teams.
Yep. What did you learn, and just your thoughts on? You had a nice story on Venga. What did you learn about him? When you talk to Venga, you got this powerful man who I honestly, I've said it, and I still believe it. I think by the end of the year, when you look at the way some recent NFL drafts have gone, I think he is a first round pick. I think he's a first round talent. And it would really not surprise me if some team, if he takes a step forward, what he can do and how he can impact the game. What I like about him is he's just one of those guys that when he talks to you, he's always got a smile on his face. Great sense of humor. You never know what he's going to say. You ask him a question, it's usually not a 1 or 2 word answer. I always enjoy the media scrums or getting a chance to talk to him, maybe even one-on-one. I'm just curious what your takeaways were. Just from having some time to chat with Venga.
Yeah, it's funny, Bob. I was going to say too on the top 25 front, a team that I considered at the end in the 25 and got just left off was Washington. I think Washington with their quarterback Damon Williams Jr. Could make some noise in the Big Ten. Really tough schedule, but could be a fun team. A team that Venga was almost on, like he was almost a part of Washington, and he's from Washington. He's from about an hour from Seattle. And Venga's recruiting journey was really interesting because he was, a 3-star guy, kind of fell through the cracks, slipped through the cracks off the radar in the Pacific Northwest because of so much that was happening at the programs around there. So Washington had fired Jimmy Lake. Oregon saw Mario Cristobal leave for Miami. USC does some recruiting up there, and USC had fired Clay Helton. Washington State's coach Nick Vrolovich was let go. So there were a lot of staff changes in that region. And Phil Troutwine, Penn State's offensive line coach, felt that Venga just kind of slipped through the cracks. He was previously committed to Washington, and then they fired Jimmy Lake and really cleaned house, and so he reopened his commitment. Penn State, during the first signing day period in December, on signing day, they had a 3-star offensive lineman from Maryland flip to Maryland. And so they were like, okay, we have Drew Shelton in this class. We have JB Nelson. We have 3 guys signed, but we really would love a 4th. So they went into it with the second signing day, in February, in that little time period in January, saying we need to find a guy. And they found Venga, through Stacy Collins, former special teams coordinator at Penn State. He spent a lot of his time out west, and he knew a guy basically in Washington that pointed him Venga's way. They called him, was a surprise to Venga, but then they had him out in State College, made a couple of home visits, and convinced him to come to Penn State. And there was a chance, new head coach at Washington, Kalen DeBoer at the time, they were pushing really hard on signing day. Venga said that he walked into his gym to pick his hats, and he still didn't know what he was going to do. He was telling his buddies, I have no idea what I'm going to do. He went with Penn State, and obviously it's worked out amazing for him. He is a preseason All-American. Mm-hmm. He is one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country. He's a massive reason why this Penn State offensive line truly believes they can win the Joe Moore Award this year, which is given to the best offensive line in college football. The way that he's developed, from redshirting and playing in 4 games as a true freshman, starting 5 games the following year, First time as a full-time starter last year. And everyone remembers, when he split out wide and he's coming into motion, the crackback blocks off on the end. But he was just consistently down in, down out, snap in, snap out. Their best offensive lineman last year. And he has another chance to anchor this unit. That's going to be relying a lot on the run, obviously, with Nick and Kaytron and protecting Drew Aller.
Yeah. When Penn State fans think of Stacy Collins and his impact at Penn State, he was a guy that was a special teams guy. They had solid special teams. I think he coached the linebackers a little bit on the outside. Penn State fans need to think fondly of Stacy Collins because his lasting gift to the Penn State program, really, he's the one I think that got the ball rolling with Venga to Penn State, and it's been a great story. And I just think that I think that Penn State fans, when you think about Stacey Collins, don't just think about what he did as the special teams coordinator. Also, what you said about Venga, besides the coming in motion and just annihilating people. If you really take a look at the final three quarters of the Big Ten championship game against Oregon, they had some really good defensive players, and a couple of them that are prominent disappeared in that game. Jalen Reed said, like, he was watching the tape, and they were nowhere to be found. It wasn't just Venga; it was all those guys. But that's really the first time I said, Penn State wore out a couple of teams. Like, they beat Maryland, and they killed that front. But what they did to Oregon, I was like, well, they got their act together. They're comfortable. Rucci's comfortable. Like, this is going to be the norm now. And Venga is right in the middle of it. So I'm glad you got a chance to talk to him. So Johnny, let's just move it forward a little bit. Just talking about your role. I know you've written about it and what you're going to continue to do, but you're kind of just getting started. You're just starting out at it, and I'm sure it's been interesting for you to budget your time and try to get to all the things you want to get to, while covering the defending Super Bowl champion and covering a team that really, on paper, looks like a potential national championship contender. And I'm sure you have a lot of ideas, but there are issues and there are challenges to try and get to both places, and you can't be in both places at once. And I know that you want to do a lot with, like you said, a kind of a big picture view of Penn State, also be there for their big games this year, and also continue your coverage of Penn State and the National College Playoff. So since we've talked about it, how has it gone? What have you learned? And have you kind of refined anything? Or if you just want to update the fans on kind of what your approach is going to be, or will maybe change a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been great. It's been, a little bit of a challenge working out the logistics here and there. But being able to have Penn State Media Day, where we have all the players open to us, a couple weeks ago, and being able to talk to Venga and save a story like that for this week has been really nice, right? And I've got a couple more on the way. A story on Javen Williams, former Wyomissing 5-star. That story will be coming out later this week as well. But no, it's been really good. It's in terms of my approach with Penn State, like, we talked a lot about my poll, the ballot, and that's going to be, a mainstay, a staple, still every Sunday morning after the college football action on Saturday. My top 25 will go up with a full explainer of why. Still going to be doing a lot of, weekly CFP projections, my own projections, and kind of how I'm seeing the college football landscape play out. And obviously, with a big eye at Penn State, right. And how their potential path is looking like. But then also focusing a lot on the features, on the stories like the Venga, the Venga feature there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, focusing on those things in the middle of the week before game coverage. I'll be at Beaver Stadium, for the home games. I'll be at the Shoe because the Eagles bye week. I'll tell you what, Bob, the schedules break really perfectly because basically when the Eagles are home, Penn State's away, and you and Max and Joe Hermit will be, alternating and rotating who's taking those away games at Iowa, UCLA, et cetera, et cetera. But the Eagles bye week is when Penn State is at Ohio State. So I will be with you guys in Columbus and very much looking forward to that game, which could be 1 versus 2 at that point.
Yeah.
The Oregon game, could be a top 5 matchup as well. So still providing, my game day thoughts and observations and big picture column or two maybe. It's been going really well. And the people down at the Eagles have been great. Getting to know not only the players and coaches a little bit, but, the PR staff, right? The SIDs, the different reporters. So it's going really well, and looking forward to continuing to grow that and provide our readers. I know we got a lot of Eagles fans who are Eagles Penn State crossover, right? So I'm your guy for that.
Yeah. Here on the Blue White Breakdown with Johnny McGonigal, Penn State Eagles. I'm here for all of it, Johnny. But before we wrap up this podcast, this episode, I talked a little bit over the weekend. I did just because we had a Thursday practice, and I wanted to get I put something up, solo pod, about some of my thoughts just about what James had to say, some of the players had to say, and they made some coaches available. I just continue to be. I just really appreciate Stan Drayton, the new running backs coach, and his no nonsense approach to coaching the position. Penn State got Jim Knowles, and that is the guy that I think Penn State fans are like, well, can't wait to see it. Well, I think the hiring of Stan Drayton taking over for Jaywan Sider is going to be very impactful, just because he's something. I mean, he's coached Zeke Elliott, he's coached Brian Westbrook, Bijan Robinson. Almost anywhere he's gone, he coached the Bears, and those guys were really good that year. Almost anywhere he's gone, you see an uptick, and these are from good players. And I think you probably remember it. I wrote about it when he had his first news conference right after they hired him. He was asked about, probably the premier running back duo in the country returning, 1,000-yard rushers, Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, and he went right at it. He's like, "Well, everyone's got weaknesses. I'm here to work on those weaknesses." And I was like, "Oh, whoa!" So I pulled him. He talked on Thursday, and I got him real early. They were talking to Phil Troutline, and I said, "Look, I thought it's refreshing, Stan, that you talked about it, because it's one thing." It's one thing to say that about talented freshmen or redshirt freshman running backs who still obviously need some things to work on. But how was that kind of received by Nick and Kaytron, and how did you do that? And how's it going? What have you seen? And he smiled. He's like, yeah. He basically said the same thing. He said, look, this is why I'm here. Everyone can get better. If you want to get elite, if you're going to be elite, this is how you get. It's ongoing. It never stops. He goes, I show it to him. I showed him the tape. I told him where they can get better, whether it's time in terms of reading a defense, anticipating and reacting, all that stuff. He said it was a slow go at first, but he said it's kicked in. And I just think that is the way it has to be. I think James Franklin loves it, and I do think that we will see the best version of Nick and Kaytron in the fall if they're healthy, because I do think already they're better because of Stan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned if they're healthy, health is an interesting thing with those two, because neither of them have missed like significant time during, the regular season or postseason in their careers at Penn State. But we know that last year, Nick, was dealing with something during kind of the middle of the Big Ten slate. And then on Kaytron, he's never really missed time, but James Franklin has said it constantly this summer that this was the first off season that Kaytron wasn't dealing with something that was holding him, off the practice field or, outside the weight room, continuing to improve. So, both of those guys being healthy going into this season is really important. And being able to learn, like you said, from Stan Drayton, to pick up some little things that will only make them better. And then health is something that we have to consider for them, throughout the year, right? Because Penn State hopes this is a 16, 17 game season. They hope it's a 16 game season. They go and win the Big Ten championship. They get a first round bye, right, and then go to the national championship game. They're hoping it's 16 games, and that's a lot. So, when they're playing FIU, Villanova, even some teams during the Big Ten slate that they feel they're going to, win considerably by, or at least have, easier third, fourth quarters, that's a time for Corey Smith and Quentin Martin and, Cam Wallace and those guys to show what they can do and give Kaytron and Nick a break. And that's another thing that we have to consider here throughout this season. Nick and Kaytron will not be here next year. So it's preparing those other running backs to be able to take that next step. You hope to see one or two really emerge as the number 3. And I know that's a training camp battle, a fall camp battle that is ongoing and something that'll continue out through this season. But yeah, Stan Drayton, everyone talks about Jim Knowles and rightfully so as, the new guy, in this coaching room, but Stan Drayton's new as well. And he brings a really unique and fresh perspective.
Yeah. So just to circle back to what I said about Stan, and like, hey man, you got things you need to work on. We're going to work on them. We're going to work on them together. You're going to get better at them. This is what you need to do. So I also asked him about Corey Smith, who you brought up. He said 2 things, and I just love it. He said, he can make people miss in a phone booth. And then he pauses, he goes, I I wish I'd seen some. I wish he was a little bit better in the recent scrimmage, though. And I'm like, I just coaches, even coaches are so coached up, and they don't want to say anything. They don't want to, but he's done it. He's been a coach everywhere. He can coach anywhere. I mean, he's not going to pull any punches, and if people don't like it, I mean,
the other thing is
just look at his track record. So I just think that if you're a Penn State running back, you're kind of on high alert this year, just because there's going to be competition, and it starts at the top, and he will. If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you need to be doing better, he's going to find out. He's going to see it. And he's going to tell you about it.
The other thing with Stan too is right, because he's coming in after being the head coach at Temple, and being the head coach at Temple is a darn near impossible job. So, having that situation behind him and saying, "Let me just get back to my roots and coach running backs." And I get to coach two of the best in the country, and then a room of younger players as well who are chomping at the bit to be the starter next year, to have a role this year. Like, that's got to be refreshing for him too. Coming off the situation he was at Temple. You look at those the two big ads in the coaching staff. We talk a lot about continuity being a reason why this Penn State team is so highly regarded. Anthony Poindexter, Terry Smith, like the Routwine, the list goes on. Of the coaches that have been in the Lash building for a long time now. But Drayton brings in a new perspective, and Jim Knowles is coming off a national championship, and he's got some Ohio State fans who appreciate him, some Ohio State fans who say, "Oh, we could have done it without you." Yeah. So he's out there to prove that, hey, I can do it again at Penn State. So, I like where this Penn State coaching staff is overall, and Stan Drayton is a really big part of that. After losing Jaywan Sider, who again was like he was a staple on that staff, not only on the recruiting trail, but he was one of the longest serving members of James Franklin's staff. And, when he leaves to land a guy like Stan Drayton, it's just really good work from James Franklin.
Agreed, Johnny. Before I let you go, anything else you need to promote or tag? I know you and Max are going to be on a live podcast Thursday around lunchtime. Anything else going on as far as stuff you're working on, or can we just put a bow on this and get on with our week covering Penn State, and you covering Penn State and the Eagles?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I talked to Javen Williams for a good bit. Again, former 5-star offensive lineman from Wyomissing, entering his third year now at Penn State, and had a really nice conversation with him, and a story coming later this week on that. I know a lot of our listeners and readers over at PennLive, him being local in state. And so, I was able to talk to him and Phil Troutwine about his development and what they hope for this upcoming season. A lot more coming from obviously me, you, Max, Joe on Penn State. And if you're an Eagles fan, stay tuned, because I'll be down at NovaCare Complex. I'll be back at the Link this Saturday for the preseason game against the Browns, and a lot coming there as well.
All right, that's it. You heard from Johnny McGonigal. I'm Bob Flounders. That's it for this episode of the Blue White Breakdown. We'll get to a bunch of stuff later in the week, more podcasts, more stories, practice availability on Tuesday. Johnny's got some Birds preseason duty, I think, on the weekend. So we got a lot going on. We're happy to work on it. We're happy to share it with you, and we will be back with more great content as the week unfolds.